I'm Dan Larson, and part of being a collector, any kind of a collector, is knowing when it's time to step away from the collection, from the never-ending pursuit of the next piece, and reassess what you're doing and why. What are you collecting? Is it even the same thing you set out to collect when you started? How far away from the original idea have you strayed? How far will you go to justify that something should be a part of your collection just to be able to add to your collection? Why are you collecting? What kind of sacrifices are you making to continue to build your collection? Do you even care about the stuff anymore? Is it still fun? Was it ever? This is why I sold my collection. Everybody collects something. It doesn't have to be big or important or even interesting to anyone else on the planet. It doesn't have to be expensive, and there does not have to be an active community built up around it. Records, games, porcelain doll head mugs, comics, sports cards, rocks, dead bugs, shark's teeth, laser discs. If I've learned one thing from 24 years on the internet, it's that if a thing exists, someone is out there collecting it. Like most kids, I didn't start my toy collection. My parents did. I didn't have a job, so all the buying decisions were coming from management. Occasional solicitations were made for purchasing recommendations, but ultimately, I had very little say in the matter. Many a request went unfulfilled. I probably stuck with toys a bit longer than most, but transitioned over to comics, partly because my friends were into comics, partly because the 80s were winding down and they straight up stopped making cool toys. Settle down, that's not my opinion. It's a well-tread, regularly reinforced conceit of the marketable nostalgia industry. Hey guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. But the assortment of action figures that survive, cultivated by chance with a smidge of emotional attachment, that bunch of leftovers could easily fit in a gallon-sized plastic bag. Boba Fett, Snake Eyes, Budo, G1, Soundwave, and some cassettes, some Muscle Guys, Starcom, Secret Wars, Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Falcon. That bag of stuff was Collection 1.0. Collection 2.0 grew from Collection 1.0 as I met other toy enthusiasts, started working jobs, and taking control of my own finances. By the way, terrible decision there, just the worst. Collection 2.0 grew fast, through the 90s with Toy Biz Marvel figures, McFarlane toys, Star Wars Power of the Force, Power Rangers, and everything my local comic shop was importing from Japan. Half of my buying decisions were driven by the love of action figures for the objects that they were and a genuine interest in the brand. The other half was driven by a speculator mindset and the fear that, like the items I no longer owned or was not able to acquire as a kid, I might never see them again. Craigslist, Amazon, eBay, the global secondary market, none of it existed yet. And I don't know if I can accurately communicate to you just how permanent disposing of something like that was at that time. There was zero expectation that you could or would ever get that thing back. I was absolutely terrified that a figure I passed on was going to be the one that someday would be worth hundreds. And one wasn't enough. Every figure, everything that came out, I had to have three. One to open, one to sell later when prices surely spiked, and a third to leave mint in the package forever. Multiply that by more years than I care to admit, and you have a considerable amount of accumulation, a considerable investment in plastic, frequently paid for with plastic, a volume of material that took up a large percentage of limited space that was rapidly approaching unsustainability. A moment of clarity is the point at which an addict can subjectively see the reality of their existence for precisely what it is, unfiltered by the temporary haze of emotional numbness brought on by the indulgence of their addictive behavior. And I want to borrow that term for selfish reasons to tell this story, but I don't want to minimize the importance of that term to actual addiction recovery, because I wasn't an addict. I could have quit anytime. That was the reality though. Too much stuff, not enough space, not enough money. And the stark realization that many of the reasons I had for collecting so much stuff had become obsolete. Through the early 2000s, the secondary market for toys and action figures was well established, and there was nothing you couldn't repurchase if you were so inclined. Any fear I had of never seeing an item again was no longer valid. I had convinced myself that I was purely academically interested in toy history, so I had to have a sample of every vintage figure ever made in case I needed it for some reason someday. For me, each piece I added to the collection felt like an accomplishment. I was making progress, working towards a goal, a greater end, only there was no end. There could be no end. The industry had reached a point where everything was pretty much locked in and on autopilot to infinity. Star Wars wasn't going anywhere. Marvel wasn't going anywhere. Transformers weren't going anywhere. New licensees every day, new manufacturers every day, better products, more variety, and it was accelerating. If I continued down the path I was on, it would swallow me, my cat, and everything else. I would be left with a mountain of stuff that I would be forced to sell at a discount under duress, negating all the accomplishments of the decade plus I had spent accumulating it. And the industry would just keep on turning, spewing out more stuff, moving on without me. Collection 2.0 was large. Lots of bins, lots of figures, lots of carded stuff. Every brand, every character, stuff you've heard of, stuff you hadn't, stuff that I forgot I had, stuff I wish I hadn't bought, stuff that was worth more than what I paid for it, and stuff that was better off displaying it right in the trash can. Birthday presents, Christmas presents, presents I gave to myself because I deserved 8 new Gundams on a Tuesday in June, 3 vintage Kenner Boba Fetts, 30 years of action figure history accumulated over 30 years. And I sold all of it, most of it. I sold my collection to save my collection. Collection 2.0 had no form, no design, no focus, no intent. It was unchecked growth expanding in every direction, consuming all the resources, A to Z, and 3 copies of everything in between. If my collection was going to survive, if I was going to survive, I had to reinvent what my collection was to me. Collection 3.0, the collection I have now, is an active, fluid thing, expanding and contracting to meet my needs, to suit my lifestyle, driven by my interests from day to day, from year to year. Pieces come, pieces go, subsets develop and are regularly pruned to keep them healthy. Collection 3.0 has history. It has my history. It is the things I have loved the most for the longest. It is the best and sometimes worst versions of things. It is mass-produced items and one-of-a-kind pieces made by me, for me, and by friends I have made along the way. And this may be obvious, but it took me a really long time to figure it out. Now, I only collect things I like and can afford.
Oh, wow.
And the occasionally totally messed up Poe Dameron, because I can't help myself, because even though it's totally messed up, it makes me so happy. I love you, Unibrow Poe Dameron. You are the kind of toy archaeology that I can't live without.
Hey, right back at you, Dave Larson.
Collection 3.0 is the characters and figures I care about the most, the things that fascinated me from the beginning, and new things that embody the same spirit of laser fights, of space adventures, of giant robots, masked heroes, and the terrible creatures they fight against. It is no longer burdened with the weight of historical importance or the unattainable status of completion, and it is more fun than it has ever been. Thanks for watching. Please hit like, hit subscribe if you aren't already a subscriber. Thank you very much to those of you who are. Share this video, and if you're in the position to help the channel grow, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/toygalaxy and let us know down in the comments if you've ever had to sell some or all of your collection, and hopefully if you're able to build it back better than it was, even if that means with less stuff. That's the end of it. It's kind of a somber thing. I didn't want to joke, hey, did you lose your collection? How bad was it?